In 1960, a British scholar named Wilfred Lambert sat down in the British Museum with 29 broken clay fragments spread across his desk. Each one had been pulled from a different excavation site across ancient Mesopotamia. Each one had been sitting in the museum for decades, filed, catalogued, ignored. Nobody had realized they all belonged to the same document. Lambert realized it. He spent years matching the broken edges, reconstructing passages that had been separated for 4,000 years. And when he finally read what he had assembled, he went quiet. Because what the ancient scribe had pressed into clay was not a hymn, not a prayer, not a list of kings. It was a confession. A man documenting in precise, specific, unsparing language exactly what he had discovered about how the universe actually works. And what he had discovered was this. He wrote it himself. I looked for good, and evil came. I prayed and was struck down. I honored my God, and my God's face turned elsewhere. He wrote that what a man considers righteous, his God finds wicked. That what a man considers wicked in his own heart, his God finds pleasing. That no living person has ever truly known what satisfies the gods or what offends them. Not the priests, not the scholars, not the most devoted man alive. Lambert read those lines in a room in London in 1960 and understood immediately why this document had never made it into the mainstream conversation about ancient wisdom, because it was not saying the gods are mysterious. It was saying the moral system you have been trusting your entire life does not correspond to anything real above you. The man who wrote this was not a bitter, poor man screaming into the void. He was Shubshi-meshre-Shakkan, wealthy official of ancient Babylon around 1300 before Christ. Slaves, fields, family, high office, and genuinely devout by his own account, in the way the ancient world expected a man of his position to be devout. He prayed, he performed every ritual, he gave what the gods required, and then he wrote exactly what happened next in language so direct, it does not feel like 4,000 years ago at all. He wrote that his body was filled with blood like one who has no God. He wrote that his heart was taken out and another placed in its stead. He wrote that he called to his God and he showed me not his face. I prayed to my goddess and she raised not her head. The diviner with his inspection found nothing. The dream interpreter could not make clear my right. He wrote that he had walked in the path the gods demanded and found a ditch. He had not sinned. He had not stolen. He had not murdered. He had not cheated. He had done what the righteous do. And the universe handed him catastrophe anyway, not as a test with a visible end, not as punishment for something hidden, just catastrophe, arriving without reason, without warning, without any of the divine logic the religious institutions had promised, was governing everything. That is what Lambert pieced together from 29 fragments. The oldest written record of a human being discovering that doing everything right is not a contract. It never was. And the gods, whatever name you give them, never signed it. The tablet is called Ludlul bel Nemeqi. It translates as I will praise the Lord of Wisdom. That title is either deeply ironic or deeply honest, depending on how you read the rest of the document. It was originally a Sumerian composition, dating to around 1700 before Christ, later expanded in Babylonian by Shubshi-meshre-Shakkan, and the fact that Lambert needed 29 separate fragments to reconstruct it tells you something important. This was not a text kept in one place by one institution. It was copied by scribal schools across the entire ancient Near East for over 1,000 years after its original composition. Fragments were found at Nippur, at Sippar, at Nineveh, at Sultantepe. By 2010, when scholars produced a new critical edition, the fragment count had grown to 66 separate pieces of clay spread across museums in London, Philadelphia, Istanbul, and Baghdad, all holding portions of one man's documented discovery that the moral universe he had built his life on did not exist. The ancient world did not suppress this text. It taught it, put it in the curriculum, made students of cuneiform copy it as part of their education, which means the scholars and administrators of the ancient Near East, the people who ran the temples and the governments and the courts, were being trained on a document that said the gods are unknowable and the righteous suffer as readily as anyone else. That was considered important enough to teach. Think about what that means for everything the official monuments were publicly claiming. Here is where the tablet moves from uncomfortable into genuinely strange. Shubshi-meshre-Shakkan does not stop at describing his own suffering. He tries to understand the logic behind it. He looks for the pattern. He studies who gets blessed and who gets punished. He observes the religious system with the careful eye of someone who spent his whole life inside it. And what he finds is nothing. He writes that he tried to understand the will of the gods and found it beyond understanding, that he tried to determine what pleased them and found no principle that held consistently, that the observation of the divine will had always been difficult for people from the beginning of time. And then he writes the line that Lambert circled in his notes. He speculates that perhaps what is pleasing to oneself is offensive to a god, that what is abominable in one's own heart may be good to one's God. He is not saying the gods are evil. He is saying the gods operate on a logic so different from human moral reasoning that the two systems do not overlap in any way that a human being can map or predict. You cannot earn divine favour by being good because the gods are not measuring goodness the way you measure goodness. You cannot avoid divine punishment by avoiding wrongdoing, because the gods are not tracking wrongdoing the way you track it. The entire framework of moral cause and effect that every religion on earth has been selling for thousands of years is, according to this tablet, a human projection onto a cosmic order that simply does not work that way. The reason this matters beyond ancient philosophy is that Ludlul Nemeqi predates the Bible's Book of Job by over 1,000 years, and Job is doing exactly the same thing. A righteous man suffers without cause. He questions why. His friends tell him he must have done something wrong, because that is how the system works. He insists he did nothing wrong. Eventually, God speaks from a whirlwind and essentially says the human capacity to understand divine logic is about as useful as asking a fish to explain architecture. Same structure, same question, same refusal of easy comfort. Scholars have debated for decades whether the author of Job read Ludlul Nemeqi. What cannot be argued is the timeline. The Sumerians got there first, and they got there without the whirlwind speech, without the restoration of fortunes framed as divine vindication. They got there with a man sitting down and writing, "I looked for good and evil, came and pressing it into clay, so that whoever came after him would know he had been there and would know what he had found." What Lambert noticed when he finally had enough of the text assembled to read the ending is the detail that has made theologians uncomfortable ever since he published it in 1960. Marduk restores Shubshi-meshre-Shakkan at the end. The suffering ends. The god who was absent for 4 tablets of documented loss shows up and fixes things. And on the surface, that looks like the standard religious payoff. But Shubshi-meshre-Shakkan is never told why it happened. The explanation never comes. He is restored, but not answered. He praises Marduk at the end, not because he finally understands, but because he is still alive. The question he wrote 4 tablets to ask remains open at the close of the document. And that detail is the most honest thing the ancient world ever admitted about this problem. That the universe is not going to explain itself to you. That you are not owed a reason. That the restoration, when it comes without one. And the best that 4,000 years of human beings pressing this question into every available surface has produced is this: survival, the chance to keep going without the answer. Shubshi-meshre-Shakkan knew that. Lambert read it in 1960 in a quiet room in London and knew it too, and now you know it. And whether that feels like comfort or not is entirely between you and whatever you believe is running the universe you are living in. If this is the kind of history that makes you feel less alone with what you are carrying, subscribe and stay close, because the next video goes into the tablet that explains why humans were built to feel exactly this way, and it was written before this one.